Good morning. I'm Matt Driskill, editor of Asian Aviation Magazine and AsianAviation.com. Welcome to In Conversation. Today we're talking with Jared Lee. He's got a long title. Bear with me. He's Vice President of Sales for Southeast Asia, Southwest Pacific, and the Indian subcontinent at Qatar Airways. Jared, welcome to In Conversation. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Matt. It's great to be speaking to you again.
Yeah, good to see you again. Hey, first things first, congratulations are in order. Skytrax recently named Qatar the world's best airline. I'm sure Mr. Al-Bakar was happy about that. Full disclosure, my wife and I fly Qatar all the time, so we're familiar with the service, of course. But tell us what made Skytrax, and this is the sixth time, I don't think it's sixth time in a row, but six times altogether that Qatar has won that title. What do you think gives Qatar the leg up on everybody else, and what did Skytrax recognize?
Well, to begin with, we are certainly very proud to be named Airline of the Year for a record sixth time by Skytrax. We've been the only airline in the world that has won this prestigious award six times. And of course, our group chief executive officer and everyone in the airline group are very happy and proud of this achievement, especially when we have won it during such a trying period for the aviation industry. So this is definitely the silver lining for us. We've also secured 5 other Skytrax awards in addition to the Airline of the Year, which is including the world's best business class lounge, best business class airline seat, best business class catering, and best airline in the Middle East. So what sets Qatar Airways apart from other airlines is that our group CEO is extremely clear in his vision of excellence. So always striving for the best and exceeding each baseline achievement is very much in our company's DNA. We look at every touch point of the business and keep redeveloping and innovating to bring the best airline experience to our customers. So at the end of the day, we want to ensure that the entire Qatar Airways customer journey is 5-star end-to-end. So let me walk you through the customer experience. When you start booking your ticket, right now we offer the most flexible booking policy of any airline during this global pandemic. And we offer unlimited changes for dates and destinations, as well as refund options should the flight be cancelled. So you can be assured that you're not going to get stuck in a situation where no one helps you and you can't get your money back.
Okay. And I'll talk to you about that in a little bit too, because I've had some problems sometimes with Qatar on the phone service and things like that. But we can talk about that later. Skytrax said its survey ran for 23 months because of COVID-19, and I noticed a story the other day that the first A380 for Qatar is been brought back to Doha and is going to be put back into service at some point, I guess. You've got a lot to do to the plane to get it ready to go. How is travel coming back for Qatar? A lot of people are opening up. You guys pretty much kept operating even though a lot of borders were closed. Are you getting a big jump in demand?
Well, the Asia-Pacific region is a little behind in reopening as compared to the US and Europe, but things are looking up for APAC. In the last couple of days, you can see that Singapore, as an example, is establishing more vaccinated travel lanes, Australia being the latest. And Southeast Asian markets like Thailand has started to reopen, with Bangkok opening on 1st of November. So we are seeing ticket bookings starting to come in again for leisure travel. And some destinations like Maldives are doing pretty well at the moment. So it's worth noting that despite the world's desire and demand to travel, countries are managing their plans to reopen their borders rather differently. So three main factors come into play: the country's COVID-19 caseloads, vaccination rates, and the quarantine policy when you return. So of course, we would like to see policies that are airline neutral, as that gives a level playing field for any airline, and does not designate specific airlines or flights to be eligible for quarantine-free travel.
Yeah, I'm not trying to hammer on China or Hong Kong. I love Hong Kong. I used to live there, as you know. I lived there for about 10 years. But this China specifically with a COVID zero approach and Hong Kong with a 21-day quarantine, are they going to ever open up? Is it going to be another year or two before they even decide to open up? I mean, how are we going to get to China? How are we going to get to Hong Kong?
I think China is very much integrated into the global supply chain and will eventually open up. That's my personal belief. But I do hope that countries will continue to do away with quarantine, and I believe it is possible with the global vaccination progressing very well. Some European countries like Germany have already opened up and seem to be doing pretty well. So hopefully, I think we can all move to an endemic phase of the pandemic of the COVID-19 globally and can travel as before. So I believe China and the Hong Kong government is closely monitoring the situation and would ease restrictions when the time is right. Yeah. So I'm hopeful about that.
I'm hopeful too. I'm ready to get my booster shot here in Singapore as well. I'm waiting on them. I got my main vaccinations about 6 months ago, so I'm waiting on the SMS so I can go get my booster shot. Jared, like everybody else in the industry, I'm really happy to see things open. You know, I'm ready to travel. I've been grounded for about 2 years, and it's very frustrating. Part of the problem is, even with the reopenings, there are some things that still, even 2 years into this pandemic, are a problem. Lots of care. I mean, for example, digital health passes, like the IATA travel pass, and there's a lot of others on the market, but there's no single set of standards. Even though ICAO has set out certain standards and all of this, there's still not one set of standards that the industry and governments have agreed on. And again, I think you trialed the travel pass, the IATA travel pass, and I guess you're still using that. But the problem is there's all these other ones out on the market. When are governments and aviation going to get their act together and say, okay, this is the standard you're going to follow? Because we've done that before with the little yellow card that when I first started traveling overseas, that was a standard. We've got standards on national passports that have to have certain things in it that are read by every single border crossing. When is that going to happen so people can have one pass instead of having all these different passes?
Well, that's a very good question, Matt. I would say that globally, it's not a technological issue. I think there are many different protocols in play here, and every government has developed its own system or apps, as we might call it, and it's an integration issue. Yeah, and we also need to be cognizant of cybersecurity protocols as well. So I think that's the challenge, to standardize a system for the whole world. So be that as it may, Qatar Airways was the first airline in the Middle East to trial the IATA's travel pass, or digital passport, as some would call it. And this was done in conjunction with the Qatar Ministry of Public Health and Primary Care Corporation and Hamad Medical Corporation. So I think as more and more airlines and countries adopt the IATA standard, we're one step closer to definitely having a standard protocol for this.
Well, I hope so. I mean, it's frustrating because, my wife is getting ready to travel around the world. She's going to go to the U.S., she's going to go to Europe. And, for example, France has a pass system that she's got to sign up for. The U.S. is actually pretty easy. She just has to show, negative PCR test and proof of vaccination, and that's it. So, I hope it does come together pretty soon. Let's switch gears for a little bit, Jared. The environment. We've got COP26 happening in Scotland right now as we speak, as you and I speak. Aviation has been criticized by a lot of people. We've had flight shaming before and things like that in Europe mainly, calling aviation a major polluter, even though it only contributes, I think, somewhere around 2 to 3% to total carbon emissions. I think it gets a bad rap because if you look at ocean shipping, they use some of the most polluting fuel in the world, bunker fuel. Qatar is committed to being a net zero carbon emission airline by 2050. What's Qatar doing to make that happen?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that, many industries are still reliant on fossil fuels. But as you can see, not just the airline industry, even in the automobile industry, is gradually moving towards more sustainable energy like electric vehicles. So it's the same with aviation, right? As we move towards more sustainable fuels, etc., I think the situation is going to get better. And this commitment by Qatar Airways as a member of One World Airline is that we will be net zero carbon emitter by 2050. And this is the first global airline alliance to unite behind a common ambitious target. So we are actually the first airline in the Middle East and just the fifth worldwide to secure accreditation to the highest level of IATA's environmental assessment program. So you can see that this sustainability issue is not being ignored by Qatar Airways. We are taking very positive measures to do our part to protect the natural environment. And we use advanced aircraft technology and fuel optimization initiatives to address CO2 emissions. And we continue to remain compliant with EU emission trading system and ICAO's carbon offsetting and reduction scheme. So our customers can also play their part to do for something for the environment, as we now provide them with the opportunity to offset their carbon emissions as part of their journey with Qatar Airways.
I mean, there's only so much that aviation can do, actually. I mean, sustainable aviation fuel is one thing. And I kind of smile when everybody talks about hydrogen, because that's not just a moon shot, that's a Mars, a Jupiter shot, because to change the entire fuel infrastructure of aviation to hydrogen and even green hydrogen, that's not going to happen for 100 years. But I want to talk about time a little bit. I know everybody's talking about 2050. I talked before with people at IATA. I've done a lot of work on the environment. I actually did my master's thesis on the environment and hazardous waste and things like that. I personally think 2050 is too late. Can aviation move faster to do this?
Well, as an industry, I think that's a challenge, but I think each airline will have to do its part. So a case in point is like Qatar Airways takes a 360-degree approach to the environment. So for instance, our new economy class meal cuisine features 80% in recyclable and biodegradable products. 80% of the tray items comply with a ban on single-use plastics, as an example. So to reduce massive wastage, we replace individual butter servings, and we offer oil-infused, ready-to-eat artisanal bread rolls. So it's little things like this that add up as a whole for the industry, and we don't just look at it from a fuel perspective. So that's our take on it.
You talked about your fleet just a second ago, and about how you're using some of the newest, most fuel-efficient aircraft. Let's talk about the fleet. I mentioned earlier you've got an A380 that's headed back to Doha to get ready to get back into service. And I asked you last time, I mean, that plane's going to go away at some point in 20 or 30 years once its flying life is over, or once it gets too expensive to use, or the fuel, you can't justify the emissions of it. I asked you last time if you thought the 787 and the A350 was kind of the future for the wide-body fleet. Boeing's been having some problems with the 787 on deliveries. Any news that you can share with us on the fleet?
Yeah, certainly. We grounded our fleet of 10 A380s due to environmental and commercial reasons. And instead, we use our state-of-the-art Airbus 350 and 787 aircraft. But having said that, our CEO recently said that we'll look at reinstating some of the A380s later in the year to meet travel demand. And as an agile leader in the industry, we always evaluate all our options when it comes to the fleet. So it's consistent that we've been always investing in the latest aircraft, and we believe that having fuel-efficient aircraft is a sustainable way to operate. So until there's further technological advancements, the 787 and A350 will still be the aircraft of choice. So, yeah.
Okay. Is Mr. Al-Bakar, is he still giving the manufacturers a hard time?
Well, you need to ask that yourself.
He's very direct with his comments about the manufacturers. I always enjoy reading stories about him. It's really good. Jared, finally, last question. I always like to end these interviews on a bright note if we can. Again, travel's opening back up slowly. That's a bright spot. What from where you sit, what's the bright spot out there for Qatar that you can look forward to?
I've always believed that travel will always return, albeit steadily. And the limitations to that would be entry restrictions and quarantine restrictions rather than anything else. People are very social creatures and rather curious ones at that. So I'm sure people want to travel and experience and explore the world again, to reunite with friends, family, and to conduct business again. I think many of us have video or Zoom fatigue, as they call it, right? So reconnecting with people is definitely on everyone's agenda. And in many ways, the travel restrictions have made all of us realize how precious it is, the ability for us to just travel as and when we want. And this is something that everyone has taken for granted in the past. But I'm quite sure moving forward, we would all treasure and value this as this ability when we regain it. And societies have always adjusted and adapted to other pandemics before, and this will be no different. So I'm really looking forward to the future for travel industry and for everyone in general to be able to travel again.
Jared, let me follow up on that just real quick, because you mentioned earlier about leisure travel, and there is a huge amount of pent-up demand for people. They want to go see their families and so on and so forth. Another segment, business travel, do you think that's going to come back as fast as people think it is? Because I have my doubts a little bit, because the chief financial officers at companies are saying, well, look, we don't need to send you to go over and do the preliminary negotiations. You can do that online. Do you think business travel is going to bounce back really quickly?
Well, I think business travel will definitely come back. And it's a question of, what for what purpose the travel will be for. As you've just rightfully said, some of the business travel that was necessary before may no longer be required. And that's a fact, right? That's a fact. Everyone has adjusted to the new norm. However, I think some people-to-people interactions in business cannot be avoided. And for that, I think, many industries will still find that there is no replacement for human-to-human contact that is so essential, especially when it comes to important business deals. So I'm optimistic that business travel will return, albeit in different forms or at different levels, but there's surely some silver lining for that.
Yeah, I'm ready for that contact. I missed my vacation in France this summer, so I didn't get to eat my mother-in-law's cooking, and she's a great cook, so I'm looking forward to that again.
Yeah.
Jared Lee, Vice President of Sales for Southeast Asia, Southwest Pacific, and the Indian subcontinent at Qatar. Thanks for joining me in conversation.
Thank you, Matt. My pleasure.